So we finally reached the end of Codename Kids Next Door, one of my favorite shows with one of my favorite endings, not to mention a great movie, a crossover special with Billy and Mandy, and a creepy website with an alien language that doesn't like when you swear at it. As we can see, the release order of seasons 5 and 6 get a bit intertwined, playing episode 2 of season 6, then episode 12 of season 5, and then the KND movie, Operation Z.E.R.O. So I'm gonna talk about season 6 in its release order, because I think it's important to talk about how it was experienced as well as how it was produced. According to Mr. Warburton's blog, Operation Z.E.R.O's initial release date changed a bunch of times and really impacted the chronological order of the series. Storyboard artist Guy Moore was taken from working on the series to focus his skills on the movie and even spent a lot of time adjusting things, so Operation Z.E.R.O made perfect sense chronologically wherever it ended up. So we're actually going to start off today with episode 2 of season 6, Operation England. Evidently not getting language annoys Nigel desperately. Nigel goes on vacation back to England to see them score some goals or something.
Come on, England! Score some fucking goals!
But he's given this mysterious parcel by a kid on his plane who tells him this mysterious book needs to be returned before anyone else gets their hands on it. We then see Nigel escape from these angry British kids who have some fun designs, like we got one girl dressed as a Queen's Guard, or this Monty Python tennis boy, or my favorite, Scarf Girl, who seems to be some combination of Harry Potter and Doctor Who, with the functionality of Doc Ock thrown in there for whatever reason. I did some research to try and find any other fun tidbits in the designs, and the best I could find is that this boy in this bowler hat's probably a reference to the Avengers. Not those Avengers from last season, but the British spy show, The Avengers, which in the late 90s was turned into an American movie with some of the lowest ratings I've ever seen. This movie was so rough, they cut down nearly a half hour out of the middle of the movie, including when the spies discovered who the main villain was, which is pretty crazy. Like, I've never heard of a movie just cutting a big chunk out of the middle like this. Nigel makes his way to the Great Library, where we learn about the Book of KND, a legendary book that archives the stories of past KND agents before they were decommissioned, holding the power to potentially dismantle the KND if in the wrong hand. To make matters worse, the KND Nigel's been fighting alongside this whole time is actually the British equivalent of the Delightful Children, the rowdy hooligans from across the square. Fortunately, the book here turns out to be just a Rainbow Monkey book the kid on the plane was trying to return before it was overdue, and the reason he's been hiding it's cause the Avengers boy wanted to borrow it right away before it got returned, and he always messes up the books cause he eats kippers while reading, which for non-Brits would be a tin of smoked herring, which actually sounds pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. To make matters even more British, we end the episode with everyone just dropping this fight and going to the pub to have some root beer. I love this little end shot of everyone just having a good time, like even Nigel's dad is here, look how happy he is. But yeah, the kids are like all in the wrong here, the rowdy hooligans work for father and we're trying to take the KND down. But it's kinda crazy to not only try to steal a book before it gets returned, but to have a track record of ruining them by getting food on them, like come on man. Episode 1B, Operation A.W.A.R.D.S, Attack Will Amazingly Ruin Dinner Show. This episode has the KND breaking into the Villain's Choice Awards, which sounds pretty close to the Kids' Choice Awards, so maybe it's a silly little jab at Nickelodeon, or maybe Cartoon Network was trying to warn us of these villains, cause in 30 seconds of me looking up stuff about the Kids' Choice Awards, I see Diddy get slimed, and then I see Dan Schneider collect the Lifetime Achievement Award. It doesn't help the trophy the kids are nominated for gets replaced with Nigel here either, but in the end the kids just grab the Nige and run off, as the villains fight among themselves for who is gonna win it. This episode has a lot of fun little parts, like a musical number or an undercover spy montage, and I'd like to take a moment to give my own personal award to the Splanker, or the solid pine loaded artillery nicely kicks enemy rear, cause it's just the most brutal weapon in the whole show. In a show with battle ready armor and gender changing lasers, nothing gives me a more visceral reaction than a couple planks of wood concussing people left and right. We see this weapon used in Cartoon Network Punch Time Explosion, which the Toilinator of all characters is playable in, which is really funny. Like, I didn't even know he was in the game and I own it. I guess he makes for a good gag character though. One of his alternate outfits is actually his suit from this episode, which is hilarious and kinda sad when you realize this episode features him losing the award for best toilet-based villain to this background villain, Potty Mouth. The adults were pretty wrong to make make Nigel the trophy here, but honestly, the kids started this by messing with their award ceremony in the first place, and it didn't really seem like it was hurting anyone or anything. So I'm actually marking the kids as in the wrong here. Like, I don't care who started it, I'm finishing it. I will turn this video around. So it might seem weird that now of all times is when K&D plays their big movie, but honestly, K&D has like 5 big crescendos throughout the season. This is just the first of many peaks. Most sources I found mention the reason episode 2 played before Z.E.R.O, aka Zero Explanation, reveals origins, is because Operation England briefly mentions the Book of K&D, which we see right away as the movie opens with these 2 kids escaping from this child labor factory and finding the Book of K&D. We see this kid, known as Number Zero, shoot a laser at this shadowy figure who will eventually learn his grandfather, only to cut to Nigel, revealing this story is a legend of the K&D's history, leading to a pretty sick intro.
But I believe the book exists, and I know what I will write in those pages if I ever find it. 5 words only. I am Kids Next Door.
We then get this 360 view of the moon base, now fully CG modeled, and it may not seem like that big of a deal, especially in 2025, but Mr. Warburton actually shares a little more on the production of this scene. Quote, "Over the course of the seasons, we got to sprinkle a little computer animation into episodes here and there, but only because the folks running Curious Pictures were generous enough to let us use their CGI staff while they were in between projects. It's not like we had extra money in the budget for such frivolities, but they helped us out, and in turn it gave them some awesome stuff to put on their reel. So when we were budgeting for Operation Z.E.R.O, I wanted to make sure we had some money for CGI. Of course, we didn't have the money for a giant CGI space battle and a fully rotating moon base like this, but somehow Curious made it happen, and I still love him for that. It might not seem like that big of a deal, but to put it in perspective, he even goes on to say the creator of Venture Bros, Chris McCullough, punched him in the arm and asked him where he got the money for a CGI treehouse. After this snazzy intro, we see the Kids Next Door Museum of Artifacts, featuring these legendary devices like a broken recommissioning device that can restore the memories of past K&D members, or the K&D tracer, which could even track the true identity of Number Zero, who's just an urban legend most kids don't believe in. All the villains break into the museum as Number 86 calls Sector V and demands they get to the moon base right away, and this is one of the few times we ever see Nigel go against a direct order, instead going to help the museum and hanging up on 86. We even see this little transmission on our screen, which is a fun little pseudo fourth wall break. Like, now that I think about it, I wonder if seeing the end transmission at the end of every episode hints we're watching each episode through like a K&D monitor or something. The adults escape from the museum and Sector V makes their way into space, where Nigel's able to get everyone off the ship and launch it directly into Sticky Beard's spaceship. And you'd think Nigel would be praised for saving the day, but the movie actually creates a really nice dilemma of Nigel being in the wrong for ignoring direct orders, regardless of his success. We learn the villains managed to steal the recommissioning module, and Father's able to recommission the big bad evil of this universe, aptly named Grandfather, and when Nigel tries to dive in once again by himself, gets his DNA stolen, which is promptly used to reawaken Grandfather's true form.
Thank you for reawakening the pure evil that lay dormant within me for these many years.
As part of his evil plan, Grandfather ageifies everyone who's ever been a kid, which causes everyone to be zombified as they slowly take over the K&D bases, turning them into tapioca factories. The Kids Next Door has permanently altered my perspective on tapioca. Like, I just made some ratatouille this week, and the recipe needs a little bit of tapioca mix, and I just sighed to myself, because I realized if I have tapioca, I must be a villain. So the movie kind of turns into a zombie flick, with numbers 3 and 4 going into the treehouse to try to get Hoagie's de-agifying device, but it just results in the Tommy getting Five Nights at Freddy's jump scared by the Toilinator.
That way, I'll help save the... oh boy.
along with the rest of Sector V getting agified, like even the hamsters, like you can see their signs. Ew. This movie also gives us one of the few directly romantic moments between Kooky and Wallaby, and just see for yourself.
Pack her up.
Nigel's search for number 0 leads him back home, where he has to save both himself and his dad from the Toilinator and the zombie hamsters, and we may have seen a little bit of the inside of the Uno's household before, but I gotta say, this is such an amazing design that really shows off the KND's world building. The house seems to be built around this gigantic treehouse on top of it, with cutouts here and there for the branches to pass through. Some carvings are deliberate, like here, and other parts look like the tree just keeps growing, poking through these picture frames and stuff. Nigel and his dad have an interesting relationship, where his father's pretty out of the loop, like his main concern's just spending time with his son, oblivious to the fact they're being chased by zombies, which helps build up one of the strongest KND plots and twists. That being, what if number 1's dad was one of the greatest KND operatives ever, but remembered none of it because of decommissioning? Number 1 uses the recommissioning device on his father, revealing he's the legendary number 0. This idea wasn't thought of by Mr. Warburton or Mo Willems, who co-wrote seasons 1 through 4 and actually returned for the movie, but was thought of by intern turned writer and animation department member Ben Wilgus. And my favorite part about reading this on the blog isn't the fact it made Warburton and Willems, quote, scream like fangirls, but the fact this idea was so good, they saved it in case the opportunity ever arose for a movie. I say so good, but the word Mr. Warburton uses here is G.I.R.L.F.R.I.E.N.D, and I never realized how often he says this made-up word. Like if you Google G.I.R.L.F.R.I.E.N.D, every result that shows up is Mr. Warburton saying it, and I'm glad I searched it myself, cause without this, I would have never realized the KND Big Shoe style is thanks to this album cover of the Ramones, where they have G.I.R.L.F.R.I.E.N.D shoes. Not only do we have the twist of the legendary number 0 being Nigel's father, but father is Nigel's uncle. I'd really love to know when it was established father was related to Nigel, cause as this comment points out way back from the season 1 video I made, they seem to foreshadow this relationship in the season 1 finale, Operation Grow Up. Whether this was deliberate or not, that is some of the most insane foreshadowing in any show I've ever seen. This also reveals that Nigel's father and father are obviously the two boys from the beginning of the movie that found the Book of KND, but father wanted power and to remain evil, if not just love and attention from grandfather. But now that grandfather's taken all the power for himself and still doesn't care for him, this family has no choice but to team up. Even with the delightful children, who are recommissioned as we learn that they're the long-lost Sector Z of the kids next door, and they were delightfulized by father and can only be temporarily reverted back to the KND here. When they confront grandfather, they make it seem like father's gonna go into a full rage and actually help here, which I would have found so cool, but he kinda just gives up and goes back inside. So Nigel has no choice but to go up to the moon base, fighting his agified teammates alongside Sector Z, and they're able to get the kids partially de-agified with the old birthday suit umbrellas, leading to the coolest moment of the whole movie, if not the whole show, where Sector V manually targets grandfather, dropping the moon base on his head.
Challenge! And nothing will ever stop me ever again! Not even a G.I.R.L.F.R.I.E.N.D flaming moon base?
Man, that slight slowdown is just the cherry on top. And also, he says G.I.R.L.F.R.I.E.N.D here. Has this been a thing throughout the show I just didn't notice? Dropping the moon base on grandfather here didn't do much to him, but number 0 is able to get them both decommissioned, even breaking the device afterwards, which we learn is intentional from this recording to his son, where he reveals the most important mission in his life now is being a good dad. It really feels like a perfectly executed sentiment, perfectly aligning with the KND, showing growing up and maturing not with pain and sadness, but love and friendship. Like, it's not we have to grow up, it's we get to grow up. The movie ends on this huge shot of the KND as Nigel reveals he wrote 5 words in the book of KND that's now been passed down to him. We are kids next door. A perfect note to end the movie on, mirroring the beginning where Nigel said, I am kids next door. For me, what makes this line so good is that I never once thought the movie went out of its way to make Nigel especially come off as selfish or really that in the wrong despite everything that happened. Like at the start when he said, I am kids next door, I thought, wow, that goes hard. Hey, look at that 3D moon base. And in the end, I thought, wow, that goes hard. Hey, look at this amazing shot. I never thought, now Nigel, there's no I in team, and same for the whole disagreement about Nigel putting himself before the team when he went against direct orders. These scenes had great drama, but I never felt like they went out of their way to make Nigel too selfish or out of character to force a dilemma. It really felt more like a story of how Nigel's attitude can be a bit of a double-edged sword at times, and it showed off his love for his family and friends more than anything. So yeah, Operation Zero has easily got to be one of the best cartoon TV movies out there. It's really a perfect balance of drama and action. It has funny moments here and there, and the lore drops are amazing, and it makes rewatching Kids Next Door that much more interesting. Like, even going back an episode to Operation E.N.G.L.A.N.D, I think, wow, all of these kids that were talking about the legendary book of KND are sitting at the pub laughing with Number Zero right now, and they don't even know it. So here's where we move on to the first episode of Season 6, production-wise, Operation Safety, Senator attacks foes, endangering today's youth. This episode's really fascinating to me, because I feel like it's gotta be based off an accumulated frustration of dealing with network feedback and notes for 5 seasons, perhaps wanting to believe that kids are smarter and more resilient than the network gives credit for. Mr. Warburton's blog doesn't reveal too much in terms of network pushback. The 2 most notable examples I found in my research was the network significantly changing Operation Spankenstein, the episode where Hoagie encounters the large zombified rainbow monkey from the dinner party, because it originally involved an army of undead spanking turkeys, which the network deemed too Halloween-y for a Thanksgiving special. I don't really see what the issue with this would have been. Like, it only occurred to me now that these episodes were supposed to be centered around Thanksgiving in the first place, because they aired a day after the holiday, but at the same time, I don't know. Every episode of Billy and Mandy felt like Halloween and I loved it. And speaking of Billy and Mandy, the network also rejected the first pass of this crossover, because in the story, Mandy would have commanded an army of pants-eating ants and ended with a big We Are the World type song about pants. And honestly, it's just something I would have had to see more in motion, because I'm with Cartoon Network here, I don't get it. I still think they should have had the freedom to do what they want though. So getting back to Operation Safety, this episode starts at school with the kids on the playground having a competition to see who can fall off the swings and crack the concrete with their butts, and like, I just can't watch this. This is more brutal than Mortal Kombat to me, like, their poor spines.
15 inches!
And Anthony Davis has cracked 15 inches of
Davis
pavement
for
on that
3.
one, Chip.
Bang! Anthony Davis from downtown! And the Lakers take a 9-point lead.
There's this guy, Senator Safety, who tries to create a safe playground for the kids, even using these giant safety robots that just bubble wrap everything. We get like a cool chase scene and action, but overall the message of not going too overboard to try to protect the kids gets a little muddled down by how unfunny and on the nose the safety bots are. In some weird, ironic way, it almost feels like the episode about trusting kids and not underestimating them feels like it underestimated them and just hammered the same few things over and over. Though I guess like a 600 IQ viewer may argue that's the point here, but that's not me. It is pretty funny the safety bots start trying to eliminate all the adults in order to protect the children. Like, the message only feels more applicable nowadays. They end up defeating the safety bots when they use ketchup to make it look like a safety bot accidentally cut Joey's face, and then he just dances around without a diaper, which was half the conflict of the episode I'm not even gonna get into here. Maybe someday I'll come back to this episode and appreciate it more, but as it stands, it's probably my least favorite episode of Kids Next Door, which all things considered is still has an insane batting average for a show. You probably already know my knowledge of X-Men severely lacking from the Christmas episode last season, like with Wintergreen the Wolverine parody, so you may enjoy this episode a lot more if the references here don't go over your head and you see this whole episode is like Senator Kelly using Sentinels to get rid of the mutants. Episode 3A, Operation Recess. Recreation ended cause enemies savor salad. Number 4 gets upset our old pal Ace is pushing Kooky on the swings, and then gets hit by the swing, breaking the pavement like he did last episode, to reveal a salad oil geyser. One may argue the most unrealistic aspect of this episode is the school getting rid of recess and enforcing a child labor salad oil rig, but for me this is way less crazy than the fact that kids were learning about taxes in school. Nigel gets Lizzie to cooperate with the mission by promising to go on a date with her if she helps him out, but she's already skeptical because Nigel's flaked on her before or even sent a robot on a date. But here we have Kooky going to the movie with a cheap disguise and voice modulator and gets caught pretty quickly.
Yes, dear. Whatever you say.
The kids are spying on this big inter-school conference where the principals discuss their plans of what to do with the salad dressing, even making their own Principal's Choice dressing, which seems to parody the brand President's Choice while looking more like Newman's Own, if anyone in the world finds that interesting besides me. Lizzie ends up destroying the whole salad dressing conference when she cries a booger through the open window into a principal's salad, inadvertently saving the day, which she has done a lot in this show. Or maybe it's not so inadvertent, but we'll get to that later. The episode was actually created in direct response to schools trying to cut back on recess in the 2000s, and Cartoon Network planning an initiative to help save recess. I can't really recall other Cartoon Network shows doing this, so I find this production note really interesting to read. Like, Recess obviously had an episode about this, or Nickelodeon's Day of Play, which is crazy to look back on. Like, we can't even have the credits of a show without ads nowadays. But yeah, for me, I involuntarily started the no recess grind set when I got to 6th grade, but at least I didn't work on a salad oil rig, I guess. The adults are obviously in the wrong, like, what do you want from me? An article saying recess helps improve grades and focus, or that unpaid child labor is bad. Episode 3B, Hamster, hungry archenemy Meowers strike to entrap rodents. We've talked a lot about the continuity in the KND series, but this one is super cool, because this episode takes place right after Lizzie grabs Nigel for the date he promised to take her on last episode, but follows the hamsters in the treehouse left alone to have a little party. It gets interrupted by the sinister felines from atop the litter box, which is one of the goofier concepts for an episode, but it's pretty fun. As a Tom and Jerry homage, it really is slapstick gag after gag, with my favorite being this little moment where, without any actual dialogue, hamster number 1 plans for hamster number 4 to wear a big dress and trick the felines, and we even get a pretty unique hamster version of the classic Bugs Bunny mid-argument switcheroo.
Pig, you're illegal. Pig, eagle, pig, eagle, pig, eagle, pig, eagle, pig, pig, eagle, pig, eagle, pig, eagle, pig, eagle, pig. I'm an eagle and I'll prove it.
In the end, the felines catch the hamsters and tie them to the treehouse covered in dynamite, but the wire gets moved to the dog houses next door, getting the cats chased off, as the hamsters just accidentally blow up the treehouse anyways. It's pretty fun to give the hamsters their own dedicated episode, because I love their designs so much. Like, even these ones stuck in the tube are so funny to me. I think this episode's obviously got to be marked as a non-applicable entry to the list, but overall, it's a fun episode and a nice little love letter to Tom and Jerry. Episode 4, Operation White House. What happens if the existing head of United States escapes? This episode starts with one of the craziest openings in all of KND. Nigel has hair. He's also an adult and the president, but he has hair. Seeing Nigel get thrown into the presidency with no memory of what's going on, being pressured by everyone to sign the Bill of No Rights for Kids, is maybe the best concept for an episode in the entire show. Like, this feels like a genuine movie plot. It's also pretty cool to see the adult versions of the other KND operatives, like his secretary's adult Kooky, who's pretty serious and deadpan, kinda like her own mom, or General Beetles, who is pretty much the same character, even wearing the #1 bald cap like every other time he's tried to force his way into power. We also learn Nigel's married to Lizzie, which makes the references to the Kennedys pretty clear with her design here, and of all the presidents to get isekai'd as, that's a pretty unfortunate one. Nigel escapes before being forced to sign the bill against the kids, going back to the treehouse, which is now inhabited by the new generation of operatives, including Nigel's son he has no memory of, Shirley, or number 1600, the leader of the new sector. We see the army pull up to the treehouse, and one of the operatives, number 5's son, helps him escape down to this prison, where we learn Abigail has been in prison so she wouldn't reveal Nigel's past in the KND. The episode ends with number 2 revealing Nigel must have swapped bodies from a parallel dimension or something, and that's why he ended up here, but as we should know by now, there isn't a multiverse where Nigel betrays the kids next door, even if the entire military has them surrounded. You can barely see the tanks because they're pulling up with battleships and whales on dry land. They all start shooting Nigel, who just becomes the Hulk and starts whacking them with the Washington Monument, and then Nigel wakes up to realize it was all just a dream and he got knocked out by one of the Toilinator's potty bombs. So hey, I guess that's a rare W for the Toilinator here. So there's a lot to unpack, like turning into the Hulk might seem crazy and random, but I guess this episode is a bit of an elaborate parody of the Hulk movie from 2003, which is about as far as my Hulk knowledge goes. And while I normally criticize quote-unquote dream endings since they oftentimes make episodes feel kinda useless or pardon the logic and lore of the established universe, I actually really like this episode, and it greatly justifies its place in the series with the ending revealing these two shadowy figures were implanting memories in Nigel's dream as some sort of mysterious test that we'll learn more about later. We'll talk more about this plot point at the end of the show, but even if this episode cut off before this, I'd still say it's a really fun episode that also showed off what the KND might look like as adults. So because this episode's a dream, it's pretty obviously gotta be marked as a non-applicable entry, so let's move on. Episode 5, Operation Spinach. Salad-pushing invaders now attempt crusade here. This episode has the K&D fighting against the Spinach Inquisition. You know, like the Spanish Inquisition, where hundreds of thousands of people were forced to convert to Catholicism at the threat of expulsion or death, but with spinach. The second half of the episode's a spinach musical, which has one particular line that's been stuck in my head, and you know, we're a team here. Let's get it stuck in all of our heads.
The Spinach Inquisition is here and it's a hoot. The Spinach Inquisition.
Some call it a leafy fruit.
If you've seen the Mel Brooks movie History of the World Part 1, you'll recognize this directly parodies the Spanish Inquisition song with lyrics you wouldn't see on Cartoon Network. Mr. Warburton tried to contact Mel Brooks, but when he called his production company, the receptionist or agent was so blunt and irate, they kinda just did the song themselves, which is kinda sad, but really funny to read about. Number 2 joins the Spinach Inquisition, but it turns out he was unaware of the Crusades. He just really loves spinach. So you know what that means, it's time for the 6th and final Argue About Food segment. Today's tooth filler is spinach, the leafy green native to Central and Western Asia, and I love spinach, especially if it's heated up, and Papa even told me to eat it to grow up big and strong. But then again, Fred Flintstone kinda said the same thing about cigarettes. It was a different time. Spinach feels like a good final food to argue in the grand scheme of things, though I'd say broccoli is the more stereotypical gross food for adults, but we'll save the broccoli argument for Powerpuff Girls. Y'all remember that episode with the alien broccoli? Made me feel like a freak for not hating broccoli. Anyways, Hoagie duels against Amerigo, the leader of the Spinach Inquisition, named after the explorer, navigator, Amerigo Vespucci, widely known for his voyages to the New World, as well as the namesake of America, which probably isn't nearly as common of knowledge as you might think. We learn Vespucci doesn't even like spinach himself, but the king of Spinachia makes them eat it, and then we learn the king doesn't even like spinach himself, he just figures if other people eat it, he won't have to. They're able to redirect the Inquisition to Canada in the end, and yeah, the adults are clearly in the wrong for forcing the kids to eat spinach here, or just disliking it in the first place. Kind of an odd episode, but a little more fun on a rewatch when you're able to follow what's going on a little more clearly, cause number 2's just so funny here, like he just gets increasingly Italian as the episode progresses.
The spinach wallaby.
In spinach we love us. We eat us in our bellies.
Episode 5B, Operation Message, make express shipment safely avoiding gummy enemies. This is another number 2 old-fashioned episode, but instead of the noir detective vibes, this episode's a western with Hoagie working as a kid version of the Pony Express, passing a note along to a girl. This isn't the first western episode of this series, and we even see the 6-Gum gang that stole Wallaby's homework make the return to steal the letter from Hoagie, who he avoids by going into the gymnasium, which is dangerous kindergarten territory, and we see the kindergartners have a Native American inspired aesthetic with a KND twist, like with these peaks of tomahawks and this crayon war bonnet, and this wasn't the first cartoon to depict kindergartners as a tribe with their own system of rule. Like, we saw the same thing in R.E.C.E.S.S, and while some may argue about how outdated and culturally insensitive either depiction is, it's not really my place to discuss, and it wouldn't be very interesting. Although a crayon headdress could be seen as pretty questionable nowadays, I think it is important to consider the intent of creators, especially when revisiting media from 20 years ago. I do think the designs look really good and perfectly capture the KND design philosophy, like having this childlike aspect to the design with the crayons and pizza is a really nice touch, and I do think they characterize these kids really well with having them debate whether to save or kill Hoagie due to the constant wrongdoings committed by the other big kids. We even see in the next scene one of the cowboys from the gang steals the kindergartner's lunch money, and Hoagie teams up with Citizen Corner to get it back. By the end of the episode, we learn the cowboys were trying to stop Hoagie throughout the episode because he left the office without the note at the beginning, not because they were trying to take it back from him. Which is pretty funny, but also, like, how sidetracked is the 6-Gum gang to steal a kindergartner's lunch money while trying to give Hoagie the note in the first place? The note the girl receives is pretty odd, simply stating that the Splinter Cell is real, and we'll learn more about the Splinter Cell as the season goes on, so just keep this random Tom Clancy game title thing in your head for now, as we move on from another non-applicable entry in the times the adults were in the wrong. Episode 6A, Operation Bridge. Before really incredible destruction, gotta evacuate. The kids next door go into a mall to detonate the bridge to a cheesy clothing shop before their back to school sale in the morning, and I really like the fact this mall just has an extremely tall bridge that doesn't blend in with the rest of the mall, and like only really leads to this one store. Really seems like a lot of construction for just one additional store in the mall, especially in the 2000s. Like what, they couldn't have just used one of the multiple GameStops each mall had? This episode has a bomb squad thing going on with the bridge set to detonate in 10 minutes, even if that means stranding poor kids inside R.E.C.E.S.S, though this seems like an awful fire hazard to not have any alternate routes down from the store. We see the Delightful Children shop here and beg Father for this kinda garish sailor suit, which looks more and more like a JoJo outfit every time I look at it. It's a cute little scene showing Father actually being nice to the Delightful Children, and the Delightful Children actually enjoying something that isn't like eating cake at the expense of others. Though this probably would have been a lot more heartwarming if I saw it before the movie reminded me these are kidnapped kids who have been brainwashed. Yeah, this isn't that cute anymore. 10 minutes remain before the bridge is destroyed, and Abigail has the idea to give these dorky kids a bit of a fashion rearrangement as we see the bridge explode with the kids running out from the explosions, all in slow motion wearing these dorky outfits, which honestly, some of them go kinda hard. Like if I saw Pharrell wearing Abby's outfit, I don't think I'd think anything of it. We even see the KND gave their outfits to the dorky kids in the clothing shop, who then escape in number 20,000 submarine instead of returning these threads. And honestly, they kinda rocked them. I feel like the episode had a light message that you don't need to have expensive clothes, or maybe that beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And I guess we see that here since the KND seem to wear pretty standard clothing, like most of the crew just wears a sweatshirt, and I mean, half of them don't even wear pants it looks like. But yeah, I consider this episode another non-applicable, like there wasn't really any adults involved besides presumably the designers of these outfits, but even then I'd argue the ugliness is subjective since I think a couple of these outfits go hard. Episode 6B, 6, Soda is Exchanged. This is one of my favorite episodes of the whole show, with a really fun crew for this episode, featuring numbers 2, 3, and 6. That's Robo Bradley, if you don't remember. Number 2 is the KND's equivalent of a rum runner, smuggling soda for a girl's birthday party against the Soda Patrol officers, which are led by our old pal Mr. Fizz, voiced by Jeff Bennett, aka Johnny Bravo.
Ready the capture claw!
I'm usually not a fan of episodes that are just action and combat without more story or comedy, but this is truly one of the best choreographed episodes of the entire show. Like, there's just constant crashes and explosions, and Robo Bradley is so fun, it just makes me wish he was involved in the show more. There's also a really fun dynamic between numbers 2 and 3 as Bradley's parents, because we see Kookie's sensitive and wants to turn back to help Robo Bradley, who went to launch a spray attack on the Soda Patrol, but Hoagie's confident or logical and argues that he can fend for himself, and it'll be too hard to go back and save him at the moment. Fortunately, Bradley's been hanging around, clinging to the back of this truck the whole time, but he might have been better off left behind, because the brakes don't work on the truck, and they break through the KND barrier, crashing right outside the birthday party. And one of my favorite plot twists of the series, it turns out this truck isn't full of soda that's about to explode, but a cake for the delightful children this girl had the kids deliver in order to get a slice for herself. This also reveals the title of this episode was a hint that could have spoiled the plot, because this is essentially Cake 6, but just calling it 6 really threw me off guard. Maybe also indicating this episode takes place a year after the first Cake special, assuming the first 5 were all for a different Delightful's birthday. Now that we've seen the movie, some may argue the Delightful children can't be marked as an extension of the adults anymore, since we know they're just brainwashed KND members, but I think for the sake of consistency within this series, I gotta still mark them as an extension of the adults, and in the wrong. Really all they did here was get a cake delivered, not even forcing others to watch them, though I guess the deception using this girl as a facade kinda made this just a free delivery the KND wouldn't do for any price, which is the primary reason I gotta mark the adults as in the wrong here. Also, there's a fun little end scene of Hoagie and Mr. Fizz at the soda bar as Hoagie pseudo-drunkenly rants about being double-crossed by a pretty girl, and even though he runs off when he learns it's Mr. Fizz next to him, we actually see him drink the root beer here. Like, that's how you know he had a tough day. Episode 7, Operation Tricycle. Tommy's ride is calamity you can't let escape. Now this episode's actually a sequel to one of the Kids Next Door comics, Operation Trike, aka Tricycle Really Is Quite Evil. It features Hoagie as a younger kid getting a tricycle for his birthday, even showing younger versions of Tommy and Hoagie's parents, which we even see Hoagie's dad. His head is always obscured by something like a lampshade, maybe so they didn't have to design this character just yet, or maybe there would have been a future twist with Mr. Gilligan being a notable character, kinda like how Mr. Boss is number 86's dad, or the Toilinator is number 4's uncle. We learn inventing runs in the family, with Hogarth Sr. putting some kind of cheese or something in the bike that shoots his grandma for calling it stupid. Everyone makes fun of this pink tricycle, but the Hoagie-mobile is actually a sentient creature thanks to Hogarth's modifications, and hates being called stupid, running over its insulters in the middle of the night. Hoagie tells the bike it's stupid to run over people who call it stupid, but before he can attack Hoagie, we see his grandma just cane it to death for running her over too. So if you read this comic, you'd watch this episode and be like, oh my gosh, Tommy is fixing up this pink tricycle that runs over people. We even get a new Kids Next Door treehouse this episode, this giant bike hub led by number 10 Speed, who holds a meeting that Chad's organizing an attack against this base. Mr. Warburton says this might be his favorite treehouse, and is even named after a bike shop that was across the street from him when he lived in Manhattan. The kids chase down Chad on their bikes, but before they can get him, Tommy crashes into all of them on his tricycle, getting called stupid once again and told to stay out of their business. Later we see numbers 3 and 4 walking their messed up bikes through a tunnel, with Tommy's bike waiting at the end, only to cut to 3 and 4 with tire tracks all over them, in a pattern just like the comic. So we see the Tommymobile is now giant and shoots houses and thumbtacks at the kids, and there's a certain tone and ambience to this episode that make it really feel like a cheesy horror movie, and I mean this with the highest of praises. Like, there really is an art to media that has silly, cheesy evil that's genuinely kind of scary. Like, can you imagine being spied on by a 50-foot bike, just slowly pedaling towards you, casually running over trees, and dusting off a moon-based ketchup laser?
Direct hit! I repeat, direct hit! Hold it. Negative. The ketchup had no effect. And do you mind telling me who thought ketchup would do anything anyway?
Now, unlike the comic that just ends with caning this poor bike, Tommy actually makes a really sweet appeal, telling the Tommymobile he likes it just the way it is. But the Tommymobile isn't looking for acceptance, or to be called a Tommymobile. It's actually jealous and upset Hoagie stopped riding it, which is a hilarious twist, and I love how the two of them argue.
Don't destroy the bike hub! Yes, anything! No way!
Making this episode a sequel to a comic is so genius, because the scene works perfectly fine without prior context, but knowing that this tricycle's been abandoned for years, thinking it was because it was pink and stupid, gives it so much more emotion. Really feels like a perfect example of how to make a great standalone episode that only offers a bonus for the fans who have happened to have read the comics. The tricycle threatens to destroy the entire treehouse if Hoagie doesn't accept its conditions, which we learn is to accept it as his bike from now on, so we end the episode with Tommy riding the Cruise Master from earlier, and Hoagie reluctantly riding the pink tricycle that threatens to blow them up if he stops. The ending's both hilarious and kind of adorable, but also kind of badass. Like, if I was Hoagie, I don't think I'd mind riding a tricycle that could just casually become a mecha kaiju weapon of mass destruction at will. Episode 8, Operation Crime. Crayon renderings implicate mostly everyone. This episode has a bunch of kids being arrested for future crimes they haven't committed yet, including number 2, so this episode passes the detective hat torch from Hoagie to Kooky, which is a really funny concept for an episode. It's kind of funny to have a character as oblivious as Kooky in the detective role. Like, it can be a little hit or miss. I find this particular clip funny, but I think it makes me realize that Hoagie has just the right level of pseudo-suave charisma that makes me find his detective episodes funny each time, whereas I find Kooky funny here, but I don't think I'd be interested in seeing her be a detective again. Maybe it's because the story kind of writes itself around her instead of with her. Like, in the end we learn this boy Oliver was faking being a psychic to get everyone arrested for cutting him in line, thus preventing him from getting good lunches. He actually succeeds with this plan, being the only kid at lunch from now on, but today's lunch is lima bean sandwiches, and this really is the most disgusting sandwich they could have made. Like, on top of being just a bad sandwich, it just looks like wet and moist to hold. This is horrible. There's a couple fun pop culture references here, like the plot kind of resembling the movie Minority Report, and I don't think I've ever mentioned Joe Palooka's name being a parody of a comic from the 30s called Joe Palooka, but yeah, better late than never. Episode 8B, Operation Party. Party animals rule teen yell. Father takes a mental health vacation, leaving the delightful children home alone, where they hold a meeting with the teens, but the teens just take advantage of this and just hold a giant party at the delightful mansion, leaving the delightful children to call the kids next door to save them. The party features a song from these aristocratic rockers called the Upper Crust, who, similar to G.I.R.L.F.R.I.E.N.D, are a real band and even got to keep their actual name in the episode.
Finally, some peace and...
Mr. Warburton says he's always been a big fan of the band and felt they'd be perfect to play at the mansion since they'd seem like a polite, quiet band, but would actually just rock out. If you have the original Guitar Hero, you can even play their song Eureka, I've Found Love.
I study the classes, that's where I'm coming from. And you got them classic lines that make
This season really humanized the delightful children way more than the other seasons. Like, yes, they still have the cake schemes, but besides learning their backstory, they show a lot more emotion and vulnerability this season, which makes me care about them way more. The kids split off on a mission through the mansion to fill the house with instant mashed potatoes to evacuate the teens, which gives us some fun little scenes like numbers 3 and 4 needing to slow dance through to get to the kitchen. But in the end, the whole mashed potato plan isn't even needed because the teens all freak out when they learn father's on his way home. The delightful children thank the kids next door for helping them since they assume the teens ran away because of the K&D, but then the potato bomb explodes anyways. I guess as part of the K&D's sworn duty to protect kids, it's better they get blamed for this anyways, but overall, it's a fun episode. It shows us parts of the delightful mansion we've never seen before, along with a lot more chill sides of Father and the Delightfuls, which is always appreciated. Also, for the sake of the list, which is getting more and more scuffed by the entry, I would have to call the adults in the wrong here on account of the teens. Episode 9A, Doghouse, desperate operative grabs homework out of unusually spooky environment. The kids next door are playing a game of Cinderball, but lose their cinder block in this creepy rover mansion. The kids can't keep playing and have to go home and finish their homework, which number 5 helps number 4 with, and while that doesn't seem too interesting, I do really appreciate the consistency of Abigail being the one to always help him with his homework. Like, as the bus stop buddy, she really does feel like the only operative both smart and patient enough to help him, and it's just sweet. Wallaby's homework mysteriously vanishes, and we learn that it isn't the poodle girl Valerie stealing the homework, but Abigail working for the queen of the were-dogs, which is in fact their teacher, Miss Thompson. So I do have to call out this moment from the original KND video, cause boy was I wrong. Will these dogs ever make a return? Does this have any correlation to the other evil adults in the show? How did kids get turned into were-dogs? Is it genetic? I don't know, it probably won't even return in this series if I had to guess, but yeah, the adults gotta be guilty here. Wallaby tracking down the homework with number 5 trying to stop him and handle things by herself is genuinely maybe the most badass scene in the whole show. It's kinda hard to elaborate how this scene feels like something straight out of an anime, but we know Mr. Warburton has a big anime influence, and this scene genuinely reminds me of arguably his favorite anime, One Piece. Not to mention number 4 is drawn as Luffy in the K&D One Piece poster. Wallaby has the most OP weapon to use against the homework eating dogs, his own math homework, and like, just look at it, he doesn't even spell his own name right. And we got 11 minus 6 equals smiley face, 10 minus 1 equals me? Did he think it equaled number 4? Were-Dog Abigail manages to tackle Miss Thompson off the roof, trying to save her, but coming up only with the necklace, which removes the curse of the were-dogs from everyone, with Miss Thompson even thanking Abby, despite being pushed off the mansion. The next day in class, Miss Thompson shares a valuable lesson to never accept a necklace from your angry ex-husband, so I guess we really just have no choice but to put the adults in the wrong here. Like, that's a crazy thing to do. Episode 9B, Operation Planet. Poor little astronauts never expected this. Numbers 3 and 4 go on a space mission together, but before Wallaby can admit his true feelings to Kooky, he finds himself marooned on a rainbow monkey planet. It plays out like a combo of Alice in Wonderland and Planet of the Apes, but with rainbow monkeys, which is a hilarious concept for an episode. There's really no better character to put in this situation than Wallaby. Like, not only is he pretty standoffish and hides his feelings, but this also isn't the first time he's been mistaken for a girl for an entire episode, if not, like, forcibly transitioned. That episode's still crazy to think about. Wallaby's attempts at being over-masculine are obviously to show the front he puts up to hide his true feelings, but I do think these specific moments are really important not only for Wallaby's character, but for fans of the series as well. Like, I've read multiple stories, comments, forum posts about how these scenes with Wallaby really help some viewers understand more about their gender identity, which might seem like a stretch to some. Like, how would Codename Kids Next Door make you realize this? But I really interpret this as the medium of animation having the power to allow us to understand the world and ourselves more. It's why I have a whole channel dedicated to it. I read hateful comments about how animation has become woke, derogatory nowadays, or like shows like The Owl House or Steven Universe inventing gay ? So I do think it's an important footnote in this debate to say, hey, Kids Next Door gave viewers this same sense of introspection 20 years ago. But yeah, I love all my viewers. I don't care if you call me soy for that. I do really appreciate y'all sharing these stories with me, so thank you. Anyways, this episode has a court case that just exposes number 4 as an angry, hateful individual, and this scene also feels like it's referencing the trial of Alice. Like, even this rainbow monkey has a heart on his head, like the Queen of Hearts. The trial ultimately leads to a guilty verdict for Wallaby, and that he needs to be hugged to death. Like, that might sound brutal, but that's straight up what they say.
This council hereby sentences him to be hugged to death.
So, similar to Planet of the Apes, the kids have been on Earth this whole time, and the animatronics just got a bit quirky, so I guess I would say the adults are in the wrong for building animatronics that can attempt to murder kids here. We also learned the big thing Wallaby's been trying to confess to Kooky this whole time isn't that he loves her, but that she has a popcorn kernel stuck in her teeth. And I'll be honest, I know this joke's been done before between numbers 3 and 4, but we're on episode 9 of the last season. I really thought if there's ever a time to actually confess his feelings, it's now. So yeah, they kinda got me here. The end credit scene is pretty funny as a parody of the Statue of Liberty scene from Planet of the Apes, where we see number 3 redecorated the treehouse as number 4 reacts in horror and disgust, really hammering home this episode as a funny cross between Alice in Wonderland and Planet of the Apes while still being very distinctly Kids Next Door. Episode 10A, Operation Science, super cool inventions encourage new commercial enterprises. Now, the KND release order has been a little odd for the final season. Last episode aired in August of 2007. Before that, there wasn't a new episode since January, and now, after another multi-month gap, we get an episode on November 2nd, 2007, a day I randomly remember because I stayed in that night to watch the premiere of Chowder, and honestly, it was well worth it. But wow, looking back, this was a really odd Friday night lineup. The only 3 shows that played here were Out of Jimmy's Head, the TV series, a bunch of new episodes of the premiere of Chowder, and this new KND episode, and then it just repeated itself. While Chowder was an amazing show, as well as KND, and not to mention Out of Jimmy's Head is an extremely guilty pleasure show of mine that's so bad it's good for me, there's just such little craftsmanship in this presentation. It's like we can almost pinpoint when Cartoon Fridays just became Friday. To further solidify the start of a new era, this is also the day the B movie released, so I guess this episode technically released on Z.E.R.O ABM, or after B movie. This episode's a clip collection in the form of rejected Kids Next Door technology presented at the Kids Next Door Technology Convention, like a taser you put in your mouth to shock an older relative if they pinch your cheeks. And most of these honestly aren't very funny, though I do enjoy the format of the episode. I do really like this thumb exercise band commercial because of this 5-second clip.
Allow me, ladies.
Like, random live-action close-ups will always be funny in cartoons to me. While I'm not crazy about the episode, I do appreciate reading that this was one of the most fun episodes to make for Mr. Warburton. We actually learn from the start of the next episode, Operation Amish, all machines legal seethes hoagie, that Sector F wins the competition with a perfume you spray on you so you don't get clean when you're forced to bathe. Like, that's disgusting. You don't hate being forced to bathe, you hate being clean? When Nigel announces that he's received a warning a splinter cell was found within the KND that wants to eliminate all the adults in the world and is abducting all the KND scientists. You might remember a few episodes ago there was the Pony Express note to Egbert that the splinter cell is real. I've always thought calling this the splinter cell was a little odd, like I just think of the Tom Clancy games. The meaning is the same here for the most part, like a splintered off faction. It just feels pretty rare to see titles referenced directly in shows like this. In order to lay low and not be abducted like the other scientists, number 2 goes to live with the Amish KND section, where he struggles to go without technology, both for the Amish tradition, and if he does, it'll alert the splinter cell to his location. The episode's okay, like, not very entertaining, but it is important to note this episode was probably inspired in part from Mr. Warburton growing up in Pennsylvania. Dexter's Lab had a somewhat similar Amish episode like this, where an inventor had to live with the more simple sensibilities of the Amish life. And series creator Genndy Tartakovsky did live in Ohio for part of his childhood, so maybe they both created these episodes on account of living in states with high Amish populations compared to the rest of the country. This episode has a great twist that requires a little bit of context from the prior episode, because there was a little scene in passing where this inventor asked number 2 if he wanted to watch Dr. Time-Space and the Continuums with him, and then number 4 punched him in the arm and called him a nerd, showing he learned nothing from Bully Island. But more importantly, shows that the events that transpired aren't the Splinter Cell, but the nerds just scooping up all the scientists so they can watch their show in peace. We even get to see what the show looks like in the credits, which is just a live-action scene of storyboard artist Jesse Schmal defeating this robot, and hey, there's Mr. Warburton. There's actually like no adults in this whole half hour, except the news reporter who doesn't really care for this convention. So yeah, I gotta mark this as a couple of non-applicables. Episode 11, Girlfriend. Guess it's realistic, Lizzie finally realizes it's essentially Nigel's dysfunction. As the title indicates, Nigel has a date with Lizzie that day, but gets sidetracked by stopping Sticky Beard from robbing the candy bank. It's a pretty cool scene and even ends with Nigel doing the famous snowboard down San Francisco scene from Sonic Adventure. Which is a cool scene I would never expect in Kids Next Door, like what? So Nigel leaves Lizzie at the altar of her sister's wedding, and later that day number 362 tells Nigel more about the Splinter Cell, and they have a lead on this operative, 65.3, but Nigel gets pulled away to go see Lizzie once again, with this genuinely sweet scene between the two.
What is the matter with you? Nigel, what are you...
Shut up and let me say I'm sorry.
Lizzie's a pretty controversial character among fans. Like, I can see why she may annoy a lot of people, but I've always enjoyed her character. Despite this sweet little scene, Nigel has to run off once again to pursue this Splinter Cell operative that might be nearby, but when Nigel learns Lizzie's been trapped inside the treehouse, we see one of the few times besides Operation Z.E.R.O that Nigel goes against the kids next door. We learn the computer system in the treehouse is holding Lizzie hostage because she loves Nigel, and they have a lot in common, like being bald and stuff. We then see the treehouse uproot itself as this big CGI tree with arms and legs, and we already know from the movie that any CGI produced in the show was a bit of a big deal, and not something they could just casually whip up, though this is a pretty intricate combo of 2D and 3D elements. Like the limbs are obviously CG, but it looks like the sections of the treehouse are actually 2D images getting distorted as they overlap, more than a 3D element with flat shading on it. Lizzie tells the treehouse computer that she can have Nigel and that she's breaking up with him, listing off all the reason why he's a bad boyfriend, which shocks the computer so much it self-destructs. It turns out this wasn't an act from Lizzie as part of a big plan, but she actually breaks up with Nigel here, and I can't believe this show has made me feel any emotion about a Lizzie scene. Like, it seems like it was just yesterday she was forcing Nigel on a date with a non-consensual boyfriend helmet. Episode 12A, Operation Caramel, Candies Are Really Altering Many Extraordinary Lives. This episode wraps up another ongoing series throughout the KND, the candy hunting mystery of Guatemala between Abigail and Heinrich. Heinrich asks Abigail for her help with the sugar circle, which causes an explosion, resulting in number 5 becoming a dork. We see Heinrich takes away the strongest trait from every member of the team with this, as Nigel's leadership, Hoagie's intelligence, Kookie's cheerfulness, Wallaby's ferocity, and Abigail's coolness have all been taken in the forms of these caramel cubes he eats. I've definitely seen this emo Kookie as a profile picture before and didn't know it was actually from an episode, so that's pretty funny. We don't know yet what Heinrich lost years ago, but we know Abigail's been holding on to this caramel for all these years because she's been holding on to hope that Heinrich could reverse this curse if he ever learned to share. Heinrich's touched by Abigail's emotions, revealing the biggest twist in the whole series, not that number 0's Nigel's father, not that father is Nigel's uncle, but that Heinrich is actually Henrietta. This plot twist is actually pretty insane. Like, I was just talking about how number 4's masculinity plays an interesting role with his character and whatnot, but this is a pretty crazy twist that's been built up for years. At the same time, this episode is like maybe the most nothing episode of the whole show. I actually can't believe it's 11 minutes long. Like, even when rewatching it, it just feels like very little happens here, and everything I do see is really sweet, but there's very little plot outside of this touching moment between the two. This actually was an episode I just must have missed as a kid, so I think whenever I saw Henrietta, I assumed it was like just fan art or something. And I don't know if I can call her in the wrong for like the actions of like the whole candy hunting arc. I feel like it's easier just to call this curse or whatever this is as non-applicable and just to move on. Episode 12B, Operation Moon, Moving Out of Neighborhood. This episode teaches us that the conspiracy theory regarding the moon landing being faked is canon to the KND universe. That is the craziest sentence of this whole crazy video. The KND moon base was already on the moon at the time, so they had to reroute the rocket, but now the government's looking into colonizing the moon, and number 4 and his family have been chosen to see if the moon's inhabitable for humans to live on. So the Beatles family lives in this Hollywood set the KND reroute this rocket to, as Nigel directs all these disasters, so they all give up on living on the moon altogether. The episode ends with number 4 sick of this moon life, running away from home, so the KND have to call in these fake aliens, so Wallaby doesn't walk off set, revealing this was all a ploy by the kids next door. This alien invasion, in turn, causes the government to shoot a bunch of missiles at the moon to eradicate the aliens. So to avoid the destruction of the KND moon base, number 3 redirects the missiles to the fake moon, where they all are right now. The highlight of this episode has to be when Kooky cuts out the signal to this live action clip of her popping the moon balloon here. And I'll just say it again, random live action segments are always funny to me. Are the adults in the wrong for trying to colonize the moon and shoot missiles at the violent aliens on it? Kinda? I guess these missiles couldn't have really done that much damage to the moon in the grand scheme of things, but I'd be pretty upset if there were aliens on the moon and the first decision was to destroy them. Also, number 4 sings yet another rendition of his Buried in the Sand song here, but replaces the lyrics with Buried on the Moon, and it's stuck in my head now, so I'm passing it on to you.
Freeze it in my suit, suit, yeah! That's the feeling up my shoes. Dust is up my nose. Is it gonna freeze off? Freeze right off my head.
So the next episode to release chronologically in The Kids Next Door is actually a crossover with Billy and Mandy, The Grim Adventures of K&D. Mr. Warburton is good pals with Maxwell Adams, and they have a bond of true friendship few can say they have, aka beating castle crashers together, leading to probably the most obscure trivia of this whole video, the fact that Mr. Warburton is a Red Knight main. Kinda interesting picks, like when I play I either main Bear, Pink Knight, or Alien, and I even bought Alien Hominid on my Xbox 360 back in the day, primarily to play as him in Castle Crashers. Anyways, this special is pretty funny, not just crossing over with the K&D, but even with Ed, Edd and Eddy for a scene. While the ants eating pants concept was rejected by the network, the episode is still pretty pants-based, as Billy rips his dad's pants by getting Grimm's scythe stuck in them, and is taken away to fix these pants, leading to number 1 and Billy trading places for the day. Mandy can obviously tell this isn't Billy right away, and it's kind of fun to know that Mandy is by far stronger than Nigel here. Like, she's probably the strongest kid in this universe when you think about it. A lot of these classic Cartoon Network shows have little crossovers and cameos, leading to a lot of people believing they all take place in the same universe. Like, even Foster's Home is referenced in a few of these shows, and vice versa, which some people have pointed out might mean that Plank is an imaginary friend this whole time, and that's why Johnny can understand him, which would actually explain a lot, honestly. The delightful children fuse with Grimm's scythe, and somehow assimilate with Billy and number 2, as Mandy takes over as number 1 now, becoming Supreme Commander of the K&D, or the MND as it's is now called, Mandy New Dictator. She's even changed the entire moon base into the Mandy base, and it's kinda hilarious the climax of this episode is a giant fight between this giant Mandy mecha, operated with the help of numbers 3 and 4, against the assimilated Grim Reaper of every kid in Billy and Mandy and KND, except for Nigel, Grim, and Abigail, who have their own skeleton mecha to fight against here. Billy's dad's able to take back his lucky pants, and Grim uses the super skeleton sword strike to defeat this assimilation of Mandy and the Delightful Children. And you know, this feels pretty Castle Crashers-y to me. Like, I wonder if that's intentional, or if I just can't stop thinking about Castle Crashers now. So in the end, the day is saved, and Mandy escapes, swearing her vengeance on the KND. Overall, it's a fun special, definitely leans more towards the more goofy tone of Billy and Mandy, but the KND don't feel out of place being funny here. It makes me realize their style of humor is more similar at times than I ever would have thought. So Operation Moon was the last 11-minute episode of Kids Next Door, but we have 2 more full episode specials to round out the show. Starting with the last episode of Season 6, Operation Treaty, Teens Readily Extend Armistice to Youngsters. This episode shows us the origin of Nigel getting into the Kids Next Door, which we've only heard about in passing, that Abby got him into the K&D. We see Nigel was a little more of a timid kid and spars with number 274, as Nigel reflects longingly on this past memory. Not only is he sad about number 274, but he's also still heartbroken about Lizzie, and to make matters worse, the mysterious figures that have been talking about the Splinter Cell all season have decided it's finally time to let Nigel in on their plan. Later that day, we see number 362 announces the teenagers and kids have agreed to sign a treaty, but all the kids are skeptical from the teenagers' past aggression. Nigel goes to discuss the treaty with the Kids Next Door's diplomat, number Infinity, and honestly, badass design. It's an infinity bow tie. Nigel enters to number Infinity and Chad fighting, and then number Infinity blames number 1 for conspiring with Chad against the treaty, as the two are chained together and taken to the Arctic prison. On the way there, Chad breaks them out by hooking up an iPod to the speaker that rocks out all the glass, and the treaty turns out to indeed be a trap by the teens, but in the chaos of all the fighting between the kids and teens, we see Nigel fights against Chad once again, actually defeating him for the first time, but it's for nothing, because we learn that number Infinity, along with Chad, have actually been on the side of the K&D this whole time, and similar to Maurice, Chad has been fighting undercover. Chad and number Infinity teleport away, leaving Nigel in the dark about whatever it is he's been chosen for, as the episode ends, revealing the 2 shadowy figures that have been following Nigel around all season are numbers 74.239 and number Infinity, and that it's finally time to take Nigel away. This really feels like one of the few ways Kids Next Door could reasonably up the ante of the events of the show so far, as we have one final episode of K&D, at least for now, Operation Interviews, and it really nicely ties together the whole show. Operation Interviews, it's now the really very interesting end wrap-up story. This episode is told through a series of interviews of the KND operatives remembering their last mission with number 1, the last time they saw him years ago. Pretty wild to start with live-action versions of the KND, who we learn have been temporarily given back their childhood memories to recall the events of the mission, and we even learn numbers 3 and 4 got married, as well as 2 and 5. It's not too often you see a show end with an actual relationship or marriage, but it's always cool to see. I'd say adults, numbers 2 and 5, act pretty similarly to their normal personalities, but we also see number 3's a serious businesswoman like she was in Operation White House. Unlike White House, number 4's got a bit of a posh country club look and even went to Harvard, at least he claims. They actually integrate a real episode into this special, with Sector V failing to capture the Delightful Children's birthday cake, which may lead technically to this being Cake 7, and upon the failure of this mission, number 362 decides to take Nigel off this mission, promoting her little brother, number 363. I guess it never occurred to me the Kids Next Door never brought back a cake in one piece all this time. Number 74.239 actually takes the cake though, and gathers all the villains, along with the sectors of Kids Next Door, for a giant scavenger hunt, with the team with the highest point value winning the cake. This brings us back to some really fun classic locations and props we've seen over these 6 seasons, like the sousaphone kid Willard fishing for the great white asparagus, or Sector J catching a bully from Bully Island, along with some crossovers I'd never expect, like number 86 in the Cheese Shogun competing to win a goldfish at the carnival game. Sector W, the team consisting of the newly appointed 363, along with the kids from Tommy's old training squad, are climbing up the ranks and are even going for the most valuable item in the whole scavenger hunt, Father's pipe. Nigel tries to stop the kids, but Father reveals this wasn't even his final form, turning into a dragon that can shoot fire into space. Look at this. The kids pull off a pretty cool team combo to knock the Dragon Father into this hole that got made in the destruction, as they send off number 1 to go back and win the scavenger hunt. Nigel has one final fight with the delightful children on this roller coaster back at the Rainbow Monkey amusement park, as we see the Delightfuls fall into this toilet, not so coincidentally right past this Welcome to New Jersey sign. Hey, I've not met a single person from New Jersey that probably wouldn't agree with this. We learned the cake this whole scavenger hunt was over was this little cupcake, and number 74.239 doesn't even give it to Nigel, he just eats it. He does, however, reveal this giant cake-like spaceship though, and that the thing Nigel's been chosen for this whole time is to enter the Galactic Kids Next Door as the first operative from Earth, where he'll help kids on other planets against the disease of adulthood, and he can never return. We end with a really touching goodbye of Nigel and his parents, whose memories have been temporarily recommissioned, not just for number 0, but the first girl in the Kids Next Door, number 999, along with these teary goodbyes with the rest of Sector V. Truly, this is one of the most cathartic conclusions to any show I've ever watched. Like, these goodbyes feel not just like the kids saying goodbye to Nigel, but us as the audience saying goodbye to Kids Next Door. Mr. Warburton speaks on his blog about how co-writer Andy Reingold felt he couldn't, or at least shouldn't, write this, which gave Mr. Warburton a moment for himself to say goodbye to his kids. Even saying he was bawling as he wrote each of these goodbyes, like number 2 packing supplies and inventions, or number 3 pretending to not know what's going on, number 4 trying his best to keep up the tough guy act, but the one that gets me the most is number 5, who plays it cool before really testing Nigel's resolve to see if he can really do this. This one always stood out the most to me. Even if Nigel didn't pass the torch to Abigail, the two really just shared a chemistry throughout the show that really didn't get that much time of its own, at least compared to a lot of the other times characters branched off for missions. So Nigel leaves the other operatives on Earth, and we see the other operatives still saddened by this loss. I don't know if Wallaby was so shocked by losing Nigel he just became smart, or if this pain caused him to pretend he's smart, but either way, it's a pretty funny change. In the end, it's revealed this whole interview was conducted by Father to find where Nigel's been hiding all these years, and it's honestly kinda creepy. He kinda looks like Slender Man here. Number 5 reveals this was all intentional though, and the operatives will be meeting back up with Nigel soon, which we could interpret as hope of a happy ending, that they'll all finally reunite after all these years apart, while also being open-ended enough that it keeps the flames alive for a potential sequel someday. The credits play, showing us a snippet of every episode of KND over the years, which is such a nice touch, ending on this original piece painted by Mr. Warburton, featuring the 5 operatives looking at the sunset, stating 2 simple words: stay young. Mr. W says he wanted to leave everyone with one final image, something that encapsulates what KND's all about. And of all the doodles he made in his sketchbook, this is what came to him. It really is such a sweet message, like it's so uplifting and hopeful, and couldn't be more relevant to the show if it tried. I even own a print of this signed by Mr. Warburton himself, and it even includes a little pencil sketch of one of the operatives from Sector V, so I had to choose number 3. It's kinda hard for me to pick a favorite operative, but I thought this would at least be the most interesting sketch to see. You might be thinking that's where Kids Next Door ends, a kid saying goodbye to his friends and going off into space to be reunited with them someday. It seems like a nice symbol for saying goodbye and growing up, but the last decade has given me hope, and honestly a lot of motivation to keep talking about this series with this last kernel of hope, Galactic Kids Next Door. In early 2015, a website popped up, rainbowmonkeys.com, rainbowmonkeys.com, and I remember seeing things every now and then about it on Facebook, before it became just AI boomer bait. This account, Numba would comment on random pages with these cryptic pictures and codes, eventually posting a picture of this Rainbow Monkeys webpage. Honestly, the most unbelievable part of this story so far is no one took the URL rainbowmonkeys.com. As fans continued to decipher the letters and numbers of the pictures and hints this website was giving, we realized it was a website counting down to April 1st, 2015. Of all the days to release this, he could not have picked a worse day if he tried, like everyone's just gonna think it's an April Fool's prank. But for better or worse, 10 days before the video got released, the website was hacked and the animatic was uploaded to YouTube under the premise of a new series being announced. My favorite part of this whole story is that Mr. Warburton wasn't mad about this leak, but the fact it got hacked was so Kids Next Door, which is hilarious and wholesome and honestly kinda badass. Like, it feels like the lore of the G.K.N.D and the real world have now intertwined into one. The way the website was intended to run was after clicking the nose of the rainbow monkey in the middle of the site, the monkey would fade away, presenting a spaceship with these 3 ominous figures staring at you. God, I hate going to this website every time. I wish I wasn't recording this at 1 in the morning. Like, this is genuinely so creepy. Why is there a freaking cat with red eyes? Like, this literally looks like Red Mist, like the Red Mist, like you remember that? Nowadays things like .exe games and creepypasta stories are pretty memed upon, but this still genuinely sends a chill down my spine. I don't know why, I just find it so creepy. This bar in the middle turns out to be a password section with a bunch of different passwords giving you different little tidbits. But typing Galactic gives you a fully voiced animatic voiced by the original K&D crew. This was so cool to see, and was honestly shocking to see Nigel about to destroy the Earth, including everyone he loves because adults live there. This isn't titled just Galactic Kids Next Door, it's Stop the Galactic Kids Next Door. We really saw Nigel live long enough to become the villain. So while it had to be cleared up that there wasn't an official series in the work, they still faced the problem of the countdown timer on the website promising something on April 1st. Honestly, as ominous as the timer is, I wonder if anyone feared this would be like the Adult Swim bomb threat fiasco 2.0. So Mr. Warburton and board artist Guy Moore actually whipped up a second animatic a week before the deadline, with Moore stating there's not really any time to revise this. He goes on to say, quote, "Dude, in 20 years in this industry, I've faced down a lot of deadlines, but I've never ever literally been up against a ticking clock. Not to mention one made with my own numbers." They even rounded up several voice actors back up to record that week who already voiced the first animatic for free out of the kindness and passion they had. So on April 1st, we see the second animatic that reveals numbers 3 and 4 were the ones who accidentally leaked the GK&D video, and Numba was actually Lizzie this whole time. Oh, cause she's Lizzie Devine. Completely retconning characters and sections of shows is tricky. Like, even on these videos I've made, I've seen the occasional comment like Lizzie actually would be better at this than Nigel, cause she's a GK&D member. Though it does kinda complicate other sections of the show, I actually really enjoy this twist. So she tells numbers 3 and 4 they have to get everyone off Earth, and when it fades to black, number 4 tells us there's no current plans for the GK&D to be a series as of now. Over 10 years later, the flame burns on that another season of K&D will air someday. It really feels like it could happen in the current age of streaming services and reboots. Despite this project receiving a ton of praise and petition signatures and more, Cartoon Network was pretty silent regarding this trailer, and they own the rights to the show as far as I know, so they can't just make it on their own, even if that was feasible from a production standpoint. In August of this year, Mr. Warburton will be attending his first convention, NostalgiaCon in Houston, and a couple people have told me that they're going to it, and honestly, I'm debating going too. Part of me feels like if there was ever a time for Galactic Kids Next Door to happen, it would be now. And he even posted a picture with the Sector V voice cast to plan super secret missions for NostalgiaCon. on. Could be nothing, could be something, but yeah, let me know if you're going. It seems like it'll be pretty cool. I haven't been to a con in close to a decade, but I might go primarily for this. So that's where the story of KND ends for now. An amazing 6th season with some awesome episodes, a touching movie that puts the whole show in perspective, and hope for a sequel series made possible only through the love and passion from this crew. Not just Mr. Warburton, not just the story artists, the voice talent, even the sound designer helped them crunch to make these G.K.N.D specials. This is one of the few shows I'd fully welcome a reboot/sequel of, but at the same time, the movie and finales have given me enough closure and enough hope that I'd be okay without it. Like, I'm grown up. Sorta. In the future, I plan to make a big compilation video of all these KND parts, and I also plan to cover the video game there too. But it really means a lot to me that so many of you have stuck around from that first video earlier this year, cause it's a really special series to me, and the fact that it's helped me connect with so many of you really is what it's all about. Alright, I'll talk to you later. Bye.